This is Energy Perspectives, a weekly podcast produced in Guyana that delves into the developments unfolding in the world's fastest growing economy.
Hi there. Welcome to this week's episode of the Energy Perspectives podcast. I am your hostess, a CEO of the Guyana Energy Conference and Supply Chain Expo, Guyana Govt. Today, we have the privilege of speaking with one of the most distinguished financial luminaries, Minister of Finance and Public Service, Dr. Ashni Singh. Minister, welcome to our program. Thank you for being here.
Guyana, thank you very much. The privilege is really entirely mine to be able to join you on this, my first engagement with the Energy Perspectives podcast.
Thank you, and hopefully not the last.
I'd be happy to come back if you would like me to.
Thank you. Minister, I want to start our discussion by looking at some of the initiatives that the government has rolled out to support sustainable growth and development. Now, the government has indeed played a critical role in shaping policies in this regard, which help to improve the lives of citizens. Recently, for example, we saw for the first time the announcement of a one-off 100,000 cash grant, which is not only going to help one particular vulnerable group or one pocket of society, but several pockets. And that the condition for that cash grant states that it will be available to citizens 18 years and older. Now, is this one of the ways in which the government is redistributing oil wealth directly to citizens, and will it be recurring?
Sure. So thank you very much again, like I said, for inviting me. And in particular, thank you very much for drawing attention to this extremely important initiative that was announced by President Ali just a few weeks ago when he addressed the National Assembly after the 2024 August-October recess. You would recall that the President gave a really historic and comprehensive a presentation to the Parliament as we came back after the recess. The initiative that you mentioned was one of the headline announcements that was made by the President. The distribution of a universal cash grant to Guyanese of adult age, 18 years and above, with no conditions attached to it other than the age eligibility criterion. And I described this as a major headline, a major initiative, because there really has been no precedent in the history of this country where an unconditional cash transfer has been made to every single adult Guyanese. There's been there's no precedent for this. And I go further to say that it is being done at scale because it's not a smaller or small or inconsequential amount that is being transferred. The amount that is being transferred, 100,000 per adult, is a very substantial amount. Plus or minus $1 here or there, it's about $500 per adult. Now, if you consider a family that comprises perhaps two parents and two adult children, a household that comprises, two parents and two adult children, you're speaking about $400,000 to that household. If you add a third child, two parents and three children, you're speaking about $500,000 Guyana being transferred to that household. This is a very substantial injection into household disposable income and household savings. And in the aggregate, we've estimated that it will cost us about $60 billion Guyana. So it's an injection of $60 billion into the disposable incomes and financial savings of households across Guyana. We anticipate before the end of this year that we will do perhaps about a half of that. You would know, of course, that we went to Parliament with a supplementary appropriation bill recently. and obtained parliamentary approval for $30 billion, $30.5 billion, which will enable us to roll this out to, before the end of this year, to about half of the eligible population, meaning essentially that by the end of this year, we'll be putting $30 billion in the hands of the Guyanese people. That's a very substantial injection into households in Guyana. And at the individual household level, if you consider what can be done with, I mean, I gave the example of a household of 5 adults.
Mm-hmm.
If you consider what a household can do with $500,000, that's a very substantial amount of money. You can pay a down payment on your house lot or your house. You can almost buy a motor car or pay a down payment on a motor car.
Mm-hmm.
You can buy major appliances for your home.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot that can be done with this, with 100,000 per person. At an individual level, $100,000 is a lot of money. You can do quite a lot with it. And so it's a major initiative, and you are absolutely correct that it is, we do see it as an avenue through which we are, and we're giving this to every single household, irrespective of economic circumstance or irrespective of any other criteria. And so you are right that it is one avenue through which the revenues that we're earning from the oil and gas sector is being made available to Guyanese citizens and Guyanese households. But I want to emphasize how strongly we feel about the fact that direct cash transfers are not the only avenue through which oil revenues can be distributed to the Guyanese people. You know that we have said that we consider it absolutely important to use this period when we're producing oil, and in particular the early days of our oil production. We have said very clearly that we see this period as a period in which we can, and we should, be investing in the things that are most critical for long-term prosperity of our country, including and in particular in the non-oil economy. Because of course we know, and I'd be happy to come back to that in a minute if you would like me to, we know of course the risks that are associated with being an economy that is, we know the risks that are associated with any economy that is exclusively dependent or overly dependent on a single sector. And so we have said, President Ali has said from the very inception, that economic diversification, and in particular the growth and expansion and competitiveness of our non-oil economy, is a paramount policy objective. And so we see, coming back to the point I was making a minute ago, we see this as a period in which we need to invest in the long-term prosperity of Guyana, the long-term resilience of Guyana, and in particular securing the competitiveness of the non-oil economy. So things like infrastructure, transport infrastructure, energy infrastructure, all of which really are geared up to help promote a more competitive non-oil economy. And in addition to that, investing in the things that matter to the well-being of the Guyanese people, education and healthcare, to make sure that people have good quality education and good quality healthcare, which itself, which is not an end in its own right, which is not an end as much as it is a means to improved household and individual prosperity, because a healthier and better educated household is one that is better able and equipped to take advantage of the new emergent economic opportunities that we're seeing. You might have heard us say, President has said it on many occasions, I have said it myself, that we really are living in the era of opportunity in Guyana. We're living in the era of opportunity. There are more job opportunities, there are more entrepreneurial opportunities, there are more educational opportunities available to the Guyanese people now than at any other time in our country's history. And we want to make sure that the Guyanese people are fully equipped to be able to take advantage of those opportunities, to get a good quality education, to get a good quality job, and therefore to be economically empowered in the most sustainable and the most lasting manner possible. So if I can pull all of those strands together, you are right in saying that the cash grant is one avenue through which we are transferring to citizens some of the revenues that we're earning, but it's really only one avenue. And of equal importance is creating opportunities for people to be able to do well independently. And that is making sure that we have the conditions that are conducive to creation of jobs and entrepreneurial opportunities, and making sure that people can get a good quality education so that they can earn and take care of themselves too.
Minister, I'm glad you touched on a topic that I want to get to, and that pertains to economic empowerment and the fact that there's more than one route to do so. And I think you've touched on and perhaps provided way more color on what is the government's fiscal philosophy. It's not just about providing cash transfers. But can you touch on the dangers of solely focusing on that route alone as or making that your primary focus of empowering citizens?
Which one? The cash transfer?
Cash transfers.
No, well, you're absolutely correct that cash transfers cannot possibly be the only means to empowering people, and it couldn't. I mean, logically, providing cash transfers to people could not possibly be the only or the most effective, necessarily the most effective way of empowering people. I mean, what we really want is a Guyana where and what we're really working towards is a Guyana where every single Guyanese person of working age is able to get a good quality job and is able to earn a good income to be able to live comfortably. That's the Guyana that we're building, and that's the Guyana that we're working every day to achieve. Because what you really want is, Guyanese families and Guyanese individuals being able to stand on their own feet and being able to earn comfortably and live comfortably. And so that is where the predominant effort of the government is focused on, and that's real empowerment. The reality is that this oil is not an infinite resource. It's not going to last forever. It's very limited in its quantity, and the revenues that are being earned by the state are also, of course, very finite in numbers. And so oil will not be around forever, and oil revenue will not be around forever. Obviously, we are optimistic that we will continue to have more positive discoveries, and that our proven reserves will be even more than they are right now, and our production will be even higher, and that we will be earning more government revenues. Obviously, we are optimistic that will be the case, hopeful and optimistic that will be the case. But the reality is that oil will not be around forever, and oil revenue will not be around forever. And so the foundation has to be laid now to make sure that both at a national level and at a household and individual level, the foundation has to be laid now for the reality that at some point in time, oil and oil revenue will not be around. And so at a national level, we can't sit around with the belief that oil production will be around forever, and so we don't need to pay attention to the rest of the economy. We can't possibly do that. No responsible government will do that. It would be recalled, in fact, that prior to our assumption of office, the APNU AFC, this was often said, after I heard this said by many, many people, including citizens of Guyana, who said to me that they were so struck by how the APNU AFC had essentially neglected all of the non-oil economy. Apparently, with the expectation that they could simply sit and wait for oil production to start. We saw, for example, how during the 2015 to 2020 period, several sectors were neglected. Sugar was essentially closed down. Serious damage was done to the bauxite industry when the investors in the Berbice River were essentially harassed until they left Guyana. So bauxite suffered a severe blow with the closure of the bauxite industry. Rice was neglected also because of the lack of investment in infrastructure. And you would recall that the then President Granger, said, rice is private business. The government is not interested in rice. Agriculture on the whole was neglected. So you saw during the 2015 to 2020 period a very noticeable, not just neglect might actually be a mild word, because not only was the non-oil economy or the pre-oil, because oil started in 2019, even in the run-up, the 2015 to 2018, early 2019 period, when there was no oil production, even in the pre-oil years, as we know, the discovery of oil was announced in 2015. Production commenced in 2019. But in 2015, they knew there was oil and production would happen. So if you look at that 2015 to 2019 period, and of course 2020, up to when they finally demitted office, you saw not only an obvious neglect of the non-oil economy and neglect of all of those sectors that I mentioned just now, but in some cases you saw active steps being taken to destroy or to close the non-oil economy, like sugar, for example, like bauxite, for example. So we have had in this country recent experience with the APNU AFC, recent experience of a government, that neglected and, in fact, by their policy actions, did harm to the non-oil economy. We now have, since President Ali's assumption and since the PPP's assumption of office in 2020, a government that has taken exactly the opposite position, that the non-oil economy is of paramount importance, that we have to make sure that agriculture remains strong and competitive, that we have to make sure that bauxite recovers and is strong, that we have to make sure that gold and our other minerals are doing well, that we have to make sure that tourism is doing well. And you're seeing the policy actions. You're seeing, for example, you've seen bauxite, the opening of a new kiln, the commencement of mass production. You've seen in the case of gold and mining, gold mining and other activities in the hinterland. You've seen, for example, that we've restored the tax concessions on heavy equipment that was so critical that the APNU AFC had taken away, that had done a lot of harm to the gold mining industry. You have seen our increased investments in hinterland roads to improve accessibility. Wind tourism, one of the first things that we did was go out with an RFP to invite proposals to build new international hotels. Today we have about 8 internationally branded hotels under construction. We have a brand new Aden Best Western that was just opened. We have a Hyatt Place. We have multiple hotels under various Marriott and Hilton and other international brands under construction. You have multiple airlines introducing services to Guyana. Since we've assumed office, we've seen United introduce a service, British Airways introduce a service, KLM announced the introduction of a service, Avianca announced the introduction of a service. You've seen expansion of routes by Caribbean Airlines, including to Suriname.
That's a complete 360 in the transformation of the non-oil economy you're talking about.
Absolutely. You've had a complete turnaround now. The APNU AFC came into government, and for 5 years there wasn't a single, knowing that oil was coming, not a single private investor in hotel, not a single hotel. I don't even know if any hotel commenced construction. Not a single investment in a new hotel.
But
for 5
Minister,
years.
with what you're describing there, do you think had this turnaround not occurred, do you think we were setting ourselves up to be a victim of the resource curse?
Well, there's no doubt in my mind that one of the biggest problems that the APNU AFC encountered was just lack of foresight and bad economic policy. I mean, we saw, for example, that when we were in government previously in the pre-2015 era, when we built the Marriott, we saw the amount of criticism and attacks that they threw at the Marriott project. Can you imagine a Guyana now or a Georgetown now without the Marriott Hotel?
Mm-hmm.
The energy conference, in which you are playing an instrumental role and you're spearheading. Can you imagine that energy conference, which brings companies from around the world and speakers from around the world, political leaders? It has attracted heads of government from the region and beyond. It has attracted the senior global leadership of ExxonMobil and other big international companies. Can you imagine if we didn't have the Marriott, where would be holding this conference?
Indeed.
And we saw the need for an international hotel with capacity. Even then, long before oil was discovered. And so, what is perhaps most striking is the complete lack of vision and complete lack of foresight and just generally bad planning and bad economic policies on the part of the APNU AFC. And there's no doubt in my mind that had they been given an opportunity to get away with the theft of our democracy in 2020 and continue with these bad policies, that you would have seen a complete and total collapse of the non-oil economy. You were seeing it already. Sugar was closed down, and forgive the repetition. Bauxite, one of the two major international companies packed up and left, essentially leaving all of their equipment and their mines and everything and saying, we're walking away from this because of the hostile environment that was created by the APNU AFC. The gold mining industry was on its knees because of the taxes that were put on heavy equipment. The agriculture was on its knees because of the taxes that were put on heavy equipment. There was no visible construction activity. There isn't a single new road that they can point to that they built. They completed some of the projects that we had on stream, East Bank, West Coast, East Coast highways that we had already started and initiated. They can't point a single road that they built. They can't point to a single new agricultural area that was opened. They can't point to a single new hotel that commenced construction. And so there's no doubt in my mind that the bad economic policies of the APNU AFC would have completely decimated the non-oil economy. It would have been a textbook case of how to mismanage a resource-rich economy by not only allowing, but by actively precipitating the destruction of the non-oil economy. There's no doubt in my mind that is what we would have seen with an APNU AFC government.
Thanks, Minister. I want to bring closure to the first topic that we discussed. I know we digressed on an equally important matter, and that was addressing the importance of the non-oil economy to the government's diversification agenda. But to return to the issue of cash grants or cash transfers as one mean of economic empowerment, is this a tool within the government's sort of toolkit to say that we can see being used in more years, as in the coming years, as more oil projects come on stream?
I would say that the principle of cash transfers to citizens is one that we have demonstrated a willingness to use to deliver transfers to citizens where the circumstances recommend it. So, for example, one of the very first things that we did when we came into government was the provision of a COVID cash grant. That's one of the very first things. We recognized that the economy was reeling from the effects of COVID-19 and, of course, from the effects of 5 years of the APNU AFC. that because of COVID-19, a lot of businesses were closed and a lot of people were out of work, or, like self-employed people were not able to earn their incomes, people who used to sell in the markets, taxi drivers, etc. You would recall, sometimes we forget, all of us, 2020 might seem like a distant memory now. We shouldn't forget that in 2020, when we came into government, the whole economy was virtually shut down. There was social distancing, you would recall. People couldn't meet and interact. Public transportation was almost had ground to a halt. The public markets were, almost completely closed. And so we recognized that there was need for an immediate injection into households. And so we introduced the COVID cash grant, which we rolled out during the latter part of the last quarter of 2020 and first half of 2021, recognizing how important this was to deliver support to households. So we demonstrated immediately a willingness to use cash transfers. We have also done it in a number of other areas. You would know, for example, that we have given one-off grants from time to time to old age pensioners. You would recall that we have done this. We have given one-off grants to persons living with disabilities from time to time. Those were, of course, targeted, to specific populations, particularly vulnerable populations. We have, of course, resumed the cash grant to school children. And not only have we resumed it, but we have also significantly increased it. That now makes a significant injection into the disposable incomes of parents who have children who have children who are going to school. And so the instrument, like you said, the instrument of cash transfers, whether conditional or unconditional, is very much an instrument that we acknowledge in the government's toolkit, as you describe it, available to us to deliver relief in cases of emergency or particularly acute need or particular difficulty, as we have done before, and also to deliver, even outside of those circumstances, support to households and individuals, as we are doing with this unconditional transfer. So it's definitely an instrument that we acknowledge that can be deployed where the circumstances are appropriate and where the circumstances necessitate it.
Thanks, Minister. I want to close quickly with just two questions, which I'll merge to one. You noted at half year that the growth has been truly incredible. And I want to take some time to just acknowledge the figures that you presented on that. You noted that it's 42.3% growth. Based on what you're seeing thus far, do you believe we will stick within that range, or do you foresee us exceeding that performance? And for your 2025 budget, what are your top two priorities?
Well, first of all, as you know, we've already started working on Budget 2025. And
Yes.
once I present Budget 2025, I will, of course, be reporting, as I always do, on the performance of the economy in the preceding year. So we're going to hear more about growth in 2024 very soon.
Okay.
But I will say that we are certainly on course to continue the remarkable growth trajectory that we've been on in recent years. We're very much on course to achieving those. Of course, a lot of that is driven by what's happening in the oil and gas sector. But importantly for us, we've had incredibly strong growth in the non-oil economy. You would know that at the half year, I reported growth of more than 11% in the non-oil economy, and we're anticipating the non-oil economy to be growing in, about that order. And that itself is quite a remarkable achievement, the achievement of growth in the order of 10, 11%. Double-digit growth is really, even if growth in the non-oil economy was 7 or 8%, it would be really astounding. The fact that it's in the order of 10, 11% is really, really an extraordinary achievement. And it's an achievement. It really is the achievement that we want to emphasize. Oil will do well and is continuing to do well and will continue to do well. But for us, we want to make sure that the non-oil economy continues to be strong. And we're, like I said, a lot of our policy effort and energies are focused on this. But yes, we are on course to realizing our projections for 2024. You ask about 2025, I would say that one of the things that successive PPPC governments, one of the things that we've prided ourselves on is policy continuity and predictability. So you don't hear our priorities changing one year from the other. And so we have always said that our energy is focused on improving the lives of the Guyanese people in every way that we possibly can. And Budget 2025 will continue this work. For us, the most important task is to improve the lives of the Guyanese people, of all Guyanese people. And that will be the overwhelming emphasis in Budget 2025, ensuring that every single Guyanese person is able to see and experience improvement in their well-being. That, of course, has many dimensions. It includes the social services that they're able to access. It includes the infrastructure in the communities in which they live. It includes the job opportunities that they're able to avail themselves of. And it improves the training and educational opportunities that are provided to them in order to avail themselves of those job opportunities and in order to be able to achieve and realize really true and lasting and sustainable economic independence and economic empowerment.
Thank you very much, Minister. It's been certainly a pleasure to have such an enlightening discussion with you. And I know that our audience has learned quite a lot about the performance of the economy and what they can expect for 2025, the transformation, the growth, and the development that will be taking place. So, Minister, once again, thank you for your insights. To our audience, we thank you as well for joining us, and we invite you to join us next week, where we will continue to bring you more insights from thought leaders here and around the world. I am Guyana Govt, CEO of the Guyana Energy Conference and Supply Chain Expo, saying goodbye and thanks again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to the Guyana Energy Perspectives podcast. Listen to us on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcast.